Hey guys, it's The Argument with Toddy Oneskip, and I'm thrilled to have on Kathy from
It's the Curious Soul Deep Dive Study.
Curious Soul Deep Dive Studies. And
Hmm.
actually, we're talking about religion or the Bible. Um,
Hmm.
we're talking about some taboo stuff here, but I always noticed in your thumbnail, as you know, as who you are, your avatar is a literal diver, like into that's the Bible, right? Isn't that what that
Yes.
is?
Yep.
Right.
That's what it is. Yep. I had that made for me.
And you've been doing, because I saw, now we met through the Whitakers. That's the thing that
Right.
we had in common. And then we
Hmm.
also ended up on the same side of, we'll just leave that there. And
Yeah.
we've developed what I'd like to call the beginning of a friendship, you know. So
Hmm.
we've spoken about some things, and so you had your channel. I looked into you a little bit, obviously. I was
Hmm.
curious about your first videos, and um they were about the Bible, and they were about discussions about the Bible. So that's where you first started?
Yeah, on YouTube. Well, no, I had a channel before that in 2016. It was a channel exposing fake Christians. I mean, and people that scammed for Christians for money and stuff like that. So, had that channel in 2016, and then in 2017, I had the second channel here. I started. So yeah, I went on every single night for 2 hours every night after work. It came on like 11 o'clock at night because I used to work like 16-hour days or whatever. 12, 14-hour days, and I'd come home and do 2 hours every night, and I did it every night for 8 years. So, and when I came on, I was a beginner. I never read the Bible. I grew up Lutheran in a Lutheran church, and we went to church every Sunday and stuff. But here I am, decades later, and later in life, and I really never even knew what was in the Bible, and I'd open up and I'd think boring and shut it, and but I had my husband passed away in 2009, and then my mom passed away in 2014, and I was really getting curious, like, where is everybody going when you die? And I mean, and I thought
Right.
maybe the answers would be in the Bible, and so I really, really wanted to learn about the afterlife and where you go in heaven and all that, and so I started that channel, and I started from the beginning because I didn't know anything, and
So that's what it
yeah.
was. You started reading the Bible every night for 2 hours for 8 years,
Yep.
and you finished it, yes?
Oh, I finished it. I mean, you never really finish it. It's like an onion. You just keep, peeling away layer and layer and layer and layer. But yeah, I mean, you can read through it, within a month or two, um, beginning to end. But you're never going to understand it that way. So yes, I was studying it and focusing mostly on the New Testament and the Gospels, and then the rest of it and everything. And yeah, every single night. And I was gung ho. I was a born again Christian, and I had a Jesus Saves shirt, and I talk about Jesus out in public, and the born again Christian. So every night I was on there. Basically, I was trying to prove that the Bible's real. It's God's living word, and every word is true, and I just wanted people to know how true it was. And well, after several years, it kind of, because I studied from the time I woke up till basically I went to bed. And when I was at work every day, I had my, uh, you know, recordings going, and even the people that worked with me learned a bunch of stuff. That's
Right.
all we didn't listen to music. We listened to the studies and stuff. And I was really interested also in eschatology, which is end times and all that, tribulation and all that. And I was out to prove the world that the Bible is true and God is real and all that stuff. But actually, after several years, it kind of started to unravel. and kind of pull a thread here and a thread here, and it just kind of unravels. And um, yeah, the deeper you go into it, the more problems there are. There's many contradictions, and then I started pointing things out, and people were not happy. I mean, just like, oh, you figure out that it's not perfect. There's a lot of errors in there. One day, that story, they're on a mountaintop doing this, and the next gospel will tell the same story, but they're on a flat out in a field, and there's no food there, but there's tons of food there, and you just think, wait a minute. I just, so each person had not just their own take on it, but the four gospels has four completely different stories. And so I just started questioning it and stuff. And a lot of people were really fascinated, but some people were offended. But it just really unravels once you start, and we also studied the Old Testament too. Now, the Jewish people don't want you to call it the Old Testament. It's offensive. They want you to call it the Tanakh, and that is.
I know it as the Torah.
Well, no, the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. It's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. So those are the first 5 books, and those are supposedly the books that Moses wrote, and those are the books of the law. Torah stands for like the law, the prophets, and forgot what the third one was, but
the Jewish Bible is the Old Testament.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And so, but so what is that called in?
Well, it's the Tanakh. It's basically 3 parts. It's arranged differently for them, but it's 3 parts. It's the laws of Moses, which is, like I said, the Torah. That's the first 5 books,
right?
That I mentioned, and then you have the prophets, Prophet Jeremiah, and all that. And they got the prophets, Daniel, and all those books, and then you also have Psalms and Songs of Solomon and stuff like that. Songs. David supposedly wrote most of the Psalms. Those are songs, actually. They're literally songs they used to sing. He had, musicians that used to sing. That he hired. So, and he wrote a lot of those songs, and other people. So that's the book of Psalms. If you read Psalms, those are actually, they're meant to be songs that sung. And then you have King Solomon. His son wrote Songs of Solomon, and I think Proverbs. I can't remember, but Songs of Solomon is kind of, some of it can be kind of filthy. It's like, not filthy, I would say. Some of it would be,
questionable, naughty.
Kind of, no, yeah, I'd say naughty, because Solomon had 700 wives and he had 300 concubines, so he had over 1,000 women,
right,
that he housed and stuff, and so he was a ladies' man, and a lot of that was back then. A king would have all them wives and try to impregnate all of them, because it populates. It just makes more of you, more of your family and stuff. So the more, because that's what the Old and New Testament is. A wife is just a purchased person, like a slave. So
right. So we'll get there. We'll get there. But I wanted to so I wanted to say where I stand when it comes to the Bible.
Sure.
So I never saw it as the living word of God. I've always seen it as man's interpretation of God's word, which could be lost like the telephone game and have a slant on it, without being disrespectful, because I do believe in Jesus Christ being the Son of God. I do believe that. I do think that the Bible, unfortunately, is the first book of politics. So though I have a strong faith and belief in Jesus Christ and God, I know that there is a huge gray area. But I do believe also in the fact that everything aligned up perfectly for us to exist. That was a miracle. And so I was born into a Jewish home, uh, meaning my family has Jewish blood, but we never really practiced it. More for
Right.
traditional when there was the big holidays, Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and we
Yeah.
celebrated Hanukkah, but we had a Christmas tree as well. So
Oh, did you?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I
was
think I went to huh?
was both your parents Jewish?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But my
Yeah, not
dad went.
practicing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, right. My grandmother, who had a big influence on my grandfather, my maternal grandparents had a big influence over our lives because, and they're Jewish, because my dad had been in trouble with the law. So my parents were actually married twice, and because that's my grandmother had just a really big influence, and my mom unfortunately was a weaker woman, so, and she fell on the mercy of the people that were going to help support her with four kids, well,
Right,
two kids
right.
at one two kids at one time. Me and my younger sibling are a product of the second marriage to the same
Hmm.
parents. So, but anyway, my dad later in prison, actually, he found Jesus Christ, and he believed in Jesus Christ being the Son of God. Um, he wasn't born again. He wasn't like that, but he believed in the fact that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, and that there was a greater being that made all of this happen the way that it happened. And so I believe that my problem with the Bible is as simple as this. You can't tell me people lived thousands of years. And that's certainly, I don't believe, the way people told time. I think that time, the way that we keep time, has changed over. If you're going to take the Bible and be literal with it, okay,
Hmm.
then you have to be literal with all of it, which
Right,
means that there had to be people that lived to be over 1,000 years old, and I don't believe that.
right, right.
So if I
Yeah.
said maybe every year could be a new a full moon, because you could keep track of a full moon when it's not cloudy, right? So maybe
Yep.
that was the way that they did that. So if you allow that, and you have to, in my opinion, if you're using critical thinking, allow that, then you have to allow the gray that comes with it. Also, you have to pay attention to the books of the Bible that were torn out of the Bible. Why were they? If all of it was
Right.
God's word, why were and that's these are facts. This isn't
Yeah.
this is facts. And then what do you do with evolution? Because I believe in evolution. And so my God to me doesn't have to be in our image here. It could be in any image. If God came down and looked like an alien, I'm all right with that, because my feeling towards God doesn't go by looks. You know what I mean? I don't know what
Right.
my God is, but I do believe in God, and I do believe in Jesus. And I asked you earlier if you believed in Jesus, and you just explained that hard going Lutheran and then born again. And so I asked you, do you believe in Jesus Christ being the Son of God? And your answer was,
Well, I used to, and until I studied and everything, and I once you study it, you'll figure out that Jesus was a Jewish man, and he was born Jewish, and he died Jewish, and he himself in the Gospels, the ones that we have left, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, none of them were written by disciples of Jesus. They were written much later, and if you look into each one of the Gospels, they weren't not one of them personally followed Jesus themselves. That's a kind of a different story, but
no,
just
that's a
that.
big story. That's valid, Kathy. I would say that's valid, because that's absolutely true. And there's a big portion of Jesus's life that we can't account for. So that's
Well,
credibility
yeah.
to what you're saying. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. So the four Gospels, and yeah, actually, I do have something to say about the first of all, I'm gonna back up if it's okay to where you
Sure.
said you didn't really believe that people lived that long and stuff, and so yeah, so at first I did, because if you believe the Bible, Adam and Eve lived like 900 years, and then when Noah he built the ark for the flood, he's supposed to be 500 years old
Wait a
when he.
minute, wait a minute. So your sound is getting, I don't know if you're too
Oh,
close to the mic or what, but you're starting to where I can't understand what you're saying.
okay, sorry.
Nope,
Maybe it's
nope.
because I'm plugged in.
No,
All
now
right.
you sound great. I think when you get
Okay.
excited, and that's fine because
Okay.
there's a lot of passion there. That's why I wanted to
Yeah.
have this conversation.
Yeah.
No, that's why, because here's what happened, guys. Kathy and I started having a conversation over the phone, and I was like, oh man, I would love to have this conversation online. Would you want to do that? Because
Hmm.
again, this is taboo, and nobody's trying to disrespect anybody here. Nobody's
No.
bashing anybody's religion. We are having a conversation about beliefs. That's what's
Right.
happening here. So those
Yeah.
people that might be too sensitive for this isn't for you, and I
Right.
respect that. For those people that are strong in their beliefs and feel like they could take an open-minded conversation, great. For those people on the fence on their beliefs, maybe this is something you want to hear. So, but if it
Right.
offends somebody, please, this isn't the video
Yeah.
for you, and there's no
Right.
disrespect.
Yeah, because every religion thinks theirs is the right religion, the correct
Of course,
religion,
of course.
and you're everybody's usually when you grow up, you're taught a religion, and you might abandon it later in life or when you get an adult, but you grow up in a household, and that's a religion that you're handed. You're told what to believe. You don't believe it on your own. You don't you don't base things off of naturally. You're told what to believe,
You're
and
taught.
so if,
Absolutely, you're taught what
yeah,
to
you're
believe.
taught what to believe. So I'm taught to be Lutheran growing up. You're taught to be Jewish. Somebody else is taught to be Islam, and so depending on where you are in the world and where you're born, that's the religion. You know what I mean? And so you kind of take it, and some people live their whole life and never even look into it. Well, I wanted to know, who am I worshiping, what am I doing? I had a lot of questions, and I was really excited because when I started reading the Bible, it was like fascinating. It was amazing, because at first I thought it was every true word of God, and all that, and it actually many
Let
years
me ask
late
you
late
this:
uh-huh.
which Bible were you reading? Because I read one called The Answer. It's a modern day
Right.
Bible. Which Bible were you reading?
Well, at first, I was told that only the King James is true word of God and all this stuff, and because that's what I was taught, and that was actually that was kind of a psyop they did back. King James is a 1611. That was the year 1611. Before that, now over the years, I've collected older Bibles, and I have a Queen Anne Bible. So before that was Queen Anne's Bible, and that was 15 something. I have that in my other room,
I
and
have
so
somebody. I know somebody that has a replication of, I think, the first Bible, which was in Armenian, I want to say, and
yeah, yeah, probably,
he got that and he showed it to me. I mean, it was beautiful, but it was made to look like, it was obviously a replication, which obviously,
yeah,
um but it was
yeah,
Armenian, and then I guess there it was also broken down in English. But yeah, so I think it's wonderful when people do reach out to see what, because it just shows that they're willing to be part of something bigger, and I love that idea. I love that idea.
yeah, yeah.
So go
But
ahead, Kathy. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay. So to me, for for the longest time, churches really don't want you to know what's in the Bible. In my opinion, they really don't strongly encourage it. They don't like. In church, you never. I was in church my whole life, never really learned anything. Just the basic scratching the surface stuff. But
Well, I mean,
um,
every Sunday in church they read parts of the Bible, and then there's Sunday school, and then there's Bible study. So I
yeah,
actually,
yeah,
I mean, so I that
yeah, yeah. But you have to really want to get it takes more than just 1 hour a week. Um, like I said,
I agree. I agree.
I, I went full throttle on it for all day, every day for years, and yeah, I found it fascinating. But yeah, so different versions of the Bible. But the King James, I found out that it was written in 1611. It was written in Old English, Shakespeare language, and Jesus didn't speak like that. No, nobody, that was. And by the time that King James was published, people didn't even speak Old English like that anymore.
Right.
And then
I'll tell you what I do. I'm sorry, but here's the biggest problem, I think, when it comes to the Bible and when it comes to religion, is that it shouldn't be so difficult for a person like you said. We're taught our religion, right? So we're taught it, and when we're taught something and we're trying to even learn how to read, we're already trying to learn how to read. So then there's this other thing coming to what looks like in a different language, and it's so hard that it's not meant. You're right when you say people aren't meant to understand, but I say that at an early age, even when it came to Sunday school, because like I've seen people get I'm sorry, to get bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah, and they don't know half of what they're saying. They are
right
remembering lines to they're not, they don't know what they are, like you said, uh uh covenant, and promising
right
themselves to. They don't know the covenant that they're making because it's hard to
right.
understand that language. So I
Yep.
agree with you, but go ahead, continue, please. This is
Yeah.
fascinating. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah. So different translations kept coming out and coming out depending on who the king or the queen, and so we have the King James, but before that was like the other one I have is the Queen Anne, and that one had the Apocrypha in it, and now so that was another 12 books or so. That were taken out, and then so the next generation
wait a minute. So you have a Bible that actually has books that were in the original Bible, but was taken out of it.
yeah, yeah, that's called the Apocrypha.
Why do you? So let me ask you, why do you think? I don't know what that is. I mean, I don't know what the story's about, who wrote that, or what the slant was. I hate to use the word slant, but I've already said I think that the Bible was the first book that had to do with politics, and when I say that, I mean because it was written by man, and man can not always be. I think that there's a few that could be objective, but not as many that supposedly had written this Bible. No way. I just don't believe that. Or they're all for the same. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
yeah.
So anyway, the missing pieces,
books,
book that you have. So what is that one about? Tell me, please.
Well, there's 12 different. I don't know how many there is. In mine, there's 12. There's different stories. There's Maccabees and Tobit, and there's just different stories. Some are really far out there, you know what I mean? But so the Catholics and whoever people in charge over time have decided what should go in and what should go out. So we're not even reading the same Bible as the people from 100 years ago or 500 years ago. So it's kind of morphed and stuff like that.
So hang on a second. Again, your sound's a little messy. But so you're saying that the Bible that people are reading today is not the same Bible that they had about 100 years ago. When did the Queen Anne Bible come to an end? I thought you said 1611, or no?
Well, King James was the 1611 version, and then so there's different versions keep coming out. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so before that was, I'd have to go look at, it's 1500 something, the Queen Anne.
Okay.
But hard to understand. And the Queen Anne, that Bible from the 1500s, they didn't have a lot of letters that we have now. So there's no J, there's no there's no U, the letter U. So it's really hard to. In fact, that wasn't even that long ago, because you can see courthouses and old buildings where it says COVRT, right?
Yep, you're right. You're
Yeah,
right.
so it's not really that long ago that we did. They added more letters to the alphabet, and so back then, so Jesus looks like SU. Then they'll say something else for the J's didn't exist. There was no J, which is funny because you know how many people in the Bible have Old and New Testament had a name with J, like Jesus, Jeremiah,
John,
John, Josiah, all these, all
some
these.
big guys. There's some pretty big guys in there that have
Yeah,
big J.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So I mean, just
But
that's just
uh his name was Joshua. No,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Yes,
Well,
right?
no, no. Yahshua actually translates to
To Joshua,
Joshua.
right?
So yeah, it would have been more like Jesus, or some people say, and people will fight. They'll even fight about how to pronounce the name. One Christian group will not even let you in if you don't say Jesus. Another one, they have to say Yeshua, and it's just like they're just people
Right,
anyway.
right.
And you know why? Because there's confusion. You know, um, and it's part of the religion is the problem with religion is it's confusing and stuff. So that one is really hard to read. That Bible, I have showed it actually on my live streams
Wow.
back in the day. That just showed people like it's hard to read without a bunch of letters in there. But yeah, so just over time everything has changed. But um, go so it did, translation stuff. If somebody was going to read the Bible today, I would recommend get just the easiest one to read, some modern version where you
Right.
don't have
Like
to
the
shape,
answer.
yeah, what thou ye shalt yell thee and
Hang
all
on,
this other stuff.
your voice, it's happening again where you're getting
Yeah, let
cut
me
off.
unplug my electric
Okay.
here. Maybe that's
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah,
But
you
yeah,
sound good.
so it's difficult to read, and so I would get a modern version. Um, and you're taught like the Southern Baptists were taught it's King James or it's from the devil. You know what I mean?
Right, right,
And
right.
they actually, like I said earlier, they had like this psyop thing. I can't remember how long ago it was. They told all the church leaders that it's got to be King James only, and if anybody uses something else, call them a heathen and expel them and stuff. It's just
Yeah,
crazy, and
I
so
agree
that's
because
why.
there's
Uh
a
huh.
big problem in my opinion. So either
Hmm.
you're going to honor every single thing in
Hmm.
the Bible, which means no shellfish, right? Because that's a sin. And when you
Yeah.
continually do it and call it a sin, it doesn't make it any less of a sin. It just makes you know that you're sinning more and more and more. And even
Hmm.
things is like two different types of material is a sin. Isn't there's things
Well,
like
yeah,
that?
mixing linen and cotton, I think it is. Yeah, they don't. I mean, if you go to, because I've studied under lots of rabbis. I love rabbis, and yeah, you can have them show the tag on their suit coat, and they will show you they're not mixing. They don't mix. To this day, the rabbis don't do that. And I ate clean for many years. I had, it's called the Levitican diet, where in the book of Leviticus, it'll tell you the clean animals and the unclean animals. And it's pretty
Right.
simple. But yeah, so I ate clean for a long time. I still kind of do. I'll bend the rules on bacon. Um, but
I think a lot of people bend the rules on bacon.
yeah, so I love studying with rabbis because they're pretty good. But yeah, they do, and those are practicing Jews. I think it's funny because there's a difference
So let me
between.
just ask you this. So when you
Uh
say
huh.
you love studying with rabbis,
Hmm.
so that's the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Um, and so what do they know of the New Testament, or it's not anything that they're familiar with? I'm asking.
Oh, no, there's some. The ones I've learned the most from the New Testament, the problems with the New Testament is from rabbis. There's a rabbi that I love watching. I've watched him for years. Is Tovia Singer, and he is on YouTube. And then there's some other rabbis too. There's a um, a talk. You know. they have a program on YouTube called Tanakh Talk, and Tanakh Talk, yeah,
Right.
Tanakh,
That's funny though.
Tanakh Talk, and I love that too. He's got different rabbis on there. Yeah, I like them, and yeah, they know. I mean, so they're defending the Tanakh, and showing you all the problems of Christianity, and so they know, those people know the Bible inside and out. Front, they don't want to have it called the Old Testament, I mean, but the Tanakh and the New Testament.
Right.
Oh yeah, but yeah, if you want to, those are my favorite teachers is Tovia Singer, and Tanakh Talk. He's got a few different, the same few on, but he has them on different times. So they're very, very familiar with that. Mm-hmm.
Do you consider yourself Jewish then, or no?
No.
So
no.
why wouldn't you consider yourself Jewish out of curiosity?
Because in order to accept, and this is why I've turned away from Christianity too, is because in the Old Testament, and we'll call it that, the Jewish people really, their belief is you need a blood sacrifice of an animal to be forgiven for sins. Now, the Bible will tell you, I mean, they haven't had a temple there for a long time, so they don't have anywhere anymore to sacrifice animals. And after the tax war in 67, in 70 AD, their temple was destroyed by the Romans, and so from that time forward, they haven't had a temple, and so their blood sacrifices kind of, they used to do them all day, you know what I mean, and they did so many blood sacrifices. They actually had like a drainage ditch coming out of the place, and that was just it was unbelievable. But so they can still be forgiven without blood sacrifice. But in the Old Testament, God, he likes blood sacrifices, and he likes the smell of burning flesh, and just some stuff and so I just don't believe anybody has to spill blood in order for me to be forgiven. And that's Christianity, because in Judaism, it's animal sacrifice, and there is no way that Jesus, as a Jewish man, would have wanted himself to be known as a human sacrifice, because in order for it to be a Christian in Christianity, it's kind of a difference of Judaism is, they did the blood sacrifices, and they always had to be an animal under 2 years old, spotless, without blemish. It had to be a perfect, and so you can't like bring them your bent up sheep with a broken leg that that's sick or something. It has to be something of high value so they would only want the best. And if you brought your sheep or your goat or whatever you're going to sacrifice, a clean animal, and you got to the temple and they thought, oh, there's a little spot on the back leg. Yeah, you can't have this one. But we have these over here in a pen that you can purchase at airport prices, and so it was a major business, but yeah, once the temple got torn down, now they can still do, all they really need is the altar to sacrifice. But anyway, their dream is to someday, because of the prophets, they said, there'll be, there's the mosque there now in that spot. That spot is important to them, because they believe that's the spot where Abraham Isaac to sacrifice, and then he's about to plunge a knife, and God says, no, don't do that, it was just a test. But anyway, so that land right there, they want their temple there, and that's their dream, is to rebuild the temple, and and restart that and stuff. But now in Christianity, you turned it in from an animal sacrifice into and just to be clear, the Old Testament does say that God would, I guess, prefer that you just don't sin at all, and then you can be forgiven and stuff. But there's you everything you can imagine.
Hang on, something's wrong with your sound again.
Really, I'm not. I wonder why.
Now it's fine. I think it's when you hit a certain pitch.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and I'm not saying anything wrong, but you'll hear it. You know, if you listen, you'll
Okay.
hear what where it
Yeah.
happens.
Okay. Yeah. Hopefully I don't give anybody seizures like I remember Entertainment Tonight. That
I do
lady's voice.
remember, and yeah, no, that's not it. It just gets all like crunchy. The sound gets all crunchy.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, yeah. So in Judaism, you can obviously still be forgiven without the spilling of blood, but in Christianity, you have to agree that in order for God to forgive your sins, you have to accept a blood sacrifice of a human, and because Christianity is all about the blood, the spilling of the blood, the shedding of blood. It's you're covered with blood, and it's a blood sacrifice religion, and I just don't accept that. Listen, if my kid sins and does something bad, I'm not going to have him go out and kill something innocent and bring it to me so I can forgive him. I mean, I don't believe that innocent blood has to be spilled. In fact, um, I believe that I should pay for my sins. I should have to pay for them, nobody else. And anyway, but yeah, I just don't believe somebody else should pay for my sins by having a blood sacrifice. I don't accept that anymore. I'm accountable for what I do.
I think
But
that we're still accountable for what we do. Um, I don't think that we're blanketed by uh by the death of Jesus literally. You know what I'm saying? I think we're certainly accountable for our sins.
yeah,
Uh I don't know if I have this hybrid. I guess I have this hybrid type of religion going, but I don't see my God as a I see my God as a loving God. I don't see my God as somebody or as a being that suppresses me, but encourages me. And you could read the Bible, like you said, and there's so many interpretations. It's
oh
just how
yeah,
people it's as simple as somebody changing their mind. When somebody changes their mind, they change their whole world. Do you know that?
right,
When somebody
yeah, yeah,
changes their mind, their whole world changes, and that is
hmm,
amazing.
yeah,
But people aren't willing to they're half the time people stand on things because they're afraid to explore other things. They're
yeah,
I found it really hard to agree to say out loud that I believed in evolution. I couldn't help that I believed in it. It made sense to me.
right,
And I found it really hard when I realized I was gay. My biggest thing wasn't my parents. I knew that they were going to love me. It was, how does this work in the world of being a Christian woman? You know what I'm saying? And God made me exactly the way I'm supposed to be, the way I am, to be honest.
yeah.
And now that's my
Well,
honesty.
well, the Bible does have a lot of hate in it. In fact, um, especially in the Old Testament, Yahweh is actually like a God of war. And many times in the Old Testament, God takes pleasure in killing lots of people, and it's and it's very racist in a way. It's just like anybody but his people are trash. You know what I mean? But they're supposed to all be his people. But
Well, like you had said, what you had said about how the Roman Empire
mm-hmm.
had, and did you go into did you share that when we weren't, well, we were recording? Because I know that you shared it when we weren't recording, and that um just
Yeah.
rings so true, that
Oh,
and the taxes, and when
yeah.
you and in the Bible, that's the word used, is taxes. Am I correct?
Absolutely. In fact, it was all about the taxes because the Romans were occupied. They were in control of Jerusalem from before Jesus was even born. So he was born into Roman authority there. So the Jewish people really had no authority. They couldn't say, "Oh, they're caught in adultery. Let's go stone them." Everything had to go through the courts, and it was the Romans' law. And they taxed the temple, all the Jewish people, and they taxed the temple like they were getting rich. And okay, so
Right.
um, and so because you had to pay your temple tax, and Jesus even complained that it's funny because Peter went down there and he said, "Hey, they said we can't come in because we didn't pay the temple tax." And Jesus told Peter to go down and throw a line in the water, and the first fish you catch, pull it out and have a coin in its mouth. Go pay your tax and my tax, because everything was tax, 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 and so when Jesus, the reason he got executed. Now Jesus never once says, "I'm going to go die for your sins. I'm going to be a human sacrifice and all this stuff." No, as a matter of fact, he he was very angry with the temple actually being turned into a den of thieves. He called it a den of thieves. And the original translation says a den of shredders, which are animals that just rip other animals apart. So he was very unhappy with the church this temple is what it is. And so he was mad that they were just there making money, and that's what it was. It was a money machine for the Jewish people, the leaders, and the Roman government. So they were working hand in hand. And
Right. Well, that's where
and-
see that's where to me it's so political. You see what I'm saying? Like
100%,
it's certainly
100%.
and it is a book of division, unfortunately.
Oh,
But go ahead, I'm
100%.
sorry. That's the thing that made me say to you,
Yeah.
Kathy, I think that I don't say that out loud a lot, but I have begun to say it a little bit more, obviously.
It's very political. In fact, almost every religion for each area of the world, those religious texts are usually written to control. It's like government control through religion. So the Jewish people had their rules, and Christianity and stuff like that. So to me, it seems like it was a form of control. And so they were under Roman authority. And and in fact, there was in 67 AD, this was 30 years after Jesus died, but 67 AD, they revolted. The Jewish people revolted against the Roman governor and said, "Screw this! We're not going to pay this anymore." And they had a war. It was a war in 67, and it was like almost 3 years, whatever. And then in 70 AD, the Romans had enough, and they just brought their military in. I mean, they had legions. I mean, they had thousands and thousands and thousands of soldiers, and they were just wiped out the place. You know what I mean? But going back to where Jesus, it was a money-making machine, and he didn't like that. And so what he did was he went the final, they call it the triumphal entry. This is, during Passover. He comes into Jerusalem. He tells the guys, yeah, this is probably not going to be good. But he goes into Jerusalem with the guys, and he goes into the temple, and he tears it up. He knocks over tables. He lets the animals out of the cages. He dumps the money of the money changers. And back then, there was tables set up from people from different different areas with their different currency. So they had like bankers set up, and he knocked the tables over and just tore up the temple. And he said, "You've made my father's house into a den of thieves, with den of shredders, just a bunch of."
Right.
And then he knew, he took off, and he knew that
So
that's going to.
So when you think he said my father's house, what
The
do you
temple.
think? Right, but if he
Mhm.
wasn't the son of God, why did he refer to himself?
Well,
Yeah.
Everybody referred to God as their father. And
Okay.
there's many people that in the Old Testament that God referred to as a son. I mean, the firstborn son was what was it? There's multiple
No.
people. And
Right.
he even calls Israel my firstborn son.
Yes.
Israel is my firstborn son. So there's many people called my son, and everybody called him the father. Today you still call him the father. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. But
Nah,
literally, I think literally is what they were saying in the Bible. How
uh,
it was interpreted as literal. No, you don't think? And it was
no, everybody called him the father. But
okay.
yeah, I mean, people reading it will think, "Hey, that's his dad."
Right.
But I mean, I could go a lot into that. But just to get to the tax part. So once he did that, that's an insurrection against the government, and that is punishable by crucifixion. And listen, a lot of people got put to death, but it was a quick death. They beheaded them, they stoned them, they whatever. But the crucifixion, where you are hung on a tree to that is the worst. And what you've done, they take your clothes off and they hang you on a tree up, and it was on Calvary.
Yeah.
It was on a hill, so everybody could see you, and you were up there until you died. And it usually took about 3 days. And what
Wow.
happens is, from hanging like that, you'll start to suffocate. You'll suffocate. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so,
Right.
and the people kept pushing up with their legs, pushing their feet up, and that's how you stayed alive, by pushing upwards with your feet. And that's why at the end, where they said, "Oh, he's not dead yet," break their legs, so they can't push up anymore. So they broke their legs. That's why Jesus died, and the other two are still alive. They broke their legs so they could stop pushing up. But anyway, it's a horrible death, a miserable death. It was a death to send a signal to everybody else. This is what happens when you go against our government. Okay, and it was very rare, but it was for coming against the government. It was an insurrection. So that's what he got put to death for. And he knew he was going. He knows. Once he did that, he knew he's going to be put to death. So that was the triumphal entry, and he did that. And that's the week, that during Passover. That and yeah, they put him on trial. And it's funny because, speaking of governments, if you read the New Testament, and particularly the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you'll see that it is very government friendly. They never say bad things about the government, because the Gospels and these books were written by Romans, and they're written in Greek, all right? Not Aramaic, not Hebrew, but Greek. They were written by Romans. And then Romans, they're not going to say bad stuff about their own government. They'll be there next, you know what I mean? So if you'll notice, it's always like when Jesus goes before Pontius Pilate, they make Pontius Pilate look like innocent, and the government's got no, and they'll send out messages like, "Pay your taxes." That's in the Bible. Oh, you got to pay your taxes. Oh, if the government takes you into custody, don't fight, just go with them. If somebody slaps you on the right side of the face, turn them, hit them on the left. It's a very makes you subdue or whatever. There's nothing in the New Testament that makes the government look bad, because they wouldn't. They don't want to be next. So it's very government friendly, if not written by the government themselves. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So yeah.
Do you consider Jesus to be a prophet?
Yeah. Well, I guess not really, looking back over 2,000 years. Now, so he says at the triumphal entry, as he's going into Jerusalem to be executed, because he knows he's gonna tear the temple and all this. But they stopped and paused, and you can see the place. I know Jerusalem like the back of my hand. I've studied the geography of first century law, different religions and all that stuff, and so. There is these spots are over there, but so on that path as you go down, and it's on the tour if you go over there, but he pauses and he stops on about halfway down the hill, and he says, "See the temple? You can see the temple perfect." And he said, "See that temple? Not one stone will be left upon another." And which did happen. What was it? 40 years later, 4 decades later, yeah, it happened. But anybody could have said that because they were under Roman authority, and yeah, eventually they're going to tear that temple down. So, I mean, I don't know how good of a prediction that was because a lot of people were saying, "Well, they're going to tear our temple down." So I don't know how much of a prophecy that was because it was good. It was a long time coming. And not only
Right.
that, but he said not one stone will be left upon another. And if you go over there, those temples were made out of giant cut stones, giant, I mean, like the size of, half the size of a car or whatever. But the Romans burnt it down and toppled it. And actually, to this day, the Wailing Wall remains. Okay, and that's
Yes.
the whole wall. That's where they go and now worship.
Yes.
And so the Wailing Wall is part of that. And not every stone. I mean, you can see where a bunch of they fell and they hit the ground so hard it's caved in the ground, but there's still stones on the ground, but not every single stone. So his prophecies were predictable and not perfect, And then I don't really know how much he really prophesied, because most of the prophecy, especially the eschatology, which is end times,
Right.
the apocalypse and stuff, that was written by other people. It was written by
Yeah,
Paul.
it
It was written by
right.
John.
But I thought that the Jewish people believed that Jesus was a prophet and they saw him as a prophet.
Yes, and yep, and
So I wanted to know if you shared the same views, but no, you don't. Well, do you think? Okay, so when we hear about Jesus turning water into wine, do you believe in the miracles that Jesus? Do you believe in that? Do you believe that he healed? That he healed people? Do you think that he rose again? What is your feeling on any of the above?
Okay, so in the Gospel of John is where he turns water into wine. Now, there's 4 Gospels, okay? Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Matthew, and, Mark was written first, then Matthew and Luke, and then John. And as each book comes out, Mark is the first one, and that's probably the most accurate. And then Matthew and Luke came out, and they filled it full of paganism, okay? All pagan gods stuff in there. And then when you get to John, he didn't even write his until, it wasn't the, disciple John. It was just John, some Roman guy. But his was written more at the turn of the century, at the end of the first century, because, it was. And you can tell words in there. Like he said, he uses the word rabbi. And rabbi wasn't even... Now, Matthew used that word once, I think. Otherwise, they didn't use that word. It wasn't even invented until the turn of the century. So John was written. There's a lot of reasons but John is where he turns water into wine. And that was the last gospel. That was, like I said, that was 70 years after Jesus was gone. These gospels are written by somebody that doesn't even know Jesus. And and so there's a lot of, they morphed the Romans, they had paganism, they had pagan gods, and one of their gods was Dionysus, okay? And Dionysus was their god long before Jesus. And Dionysus was the god of wine and partying and stuff like that. And Dionysus is the one who originally turned water into wine. and there's a lot. Like if you'll see Jesus have a wreath on his head, a wreath, like a crown, a wreath. Well, that's straight out of Dionysus. You know what I mean? Yeah, but yeah. So Dionysus was the god of wine, and he's the one that originally turned water into wine. There's a lot of paganism in the book of John and Matthew, particularly. A lot of it. I mean, they just meshed their religion with the story of Jesus and stuff.
So, I think it's amazing. I'm sorry. I think it's amazing that everybody can read that book and really interpret in their own way. You know what I mean? Like in what makes sense and what feels right for them. And that's why. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's I don't mean to interrupt. That I mean, it is believable if you just really don't know anything if you just take it at face value, okay? But once you start learning about pagan gods, the gods that were before them, um, you'll see that I studied Roman mythology and all that stuff, and you'll see clear as day that they're mixing their stuff in there. All right. Um,
Right.
and
Wow.
as far as miracles, yeah, uh, people have been doing miracles for a long time. And it's so funny because I did studies before showing people, you tell me the difference between magic and miracles. Because there's Simon the magician was, doing stuff and they called him a demon. And then other people do the same stuff and that's a miracle. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so, you know, if you, so really, if you learn first century religions and what the Romans their pagan gods and you got to learn. You also have to learn like uh, first century law, okay? Because a lot of stuff just would never ever have happened, okay? Like the woman caught in adultery. I'm pretty sure that's in the Gospel of John. The woman caught in adultery, that would have never ever happened. Okay, so they find this woman, they come drag her and throw her on the ground before Jesus, and they say, "Yeah, she's caught in adultery," and they're like, "Yeah, let's kill her." And so they're picking up stones and they're gonna kill her, which is ridiculous because back then, first of all, they're under Roman authority. They would have had to go to the court, just like Jesus had to. You go to one priest, and then you go to the high priest, and then you go to the court. And it's a process. It's a legal process. It might only take them 3 days, but they had a process that you had to go through. And always, that woman would have been accompanied by the man who she was committing adultery with. Now, so they would have been tried side by side. They would have been found guilty side by side, and they would have been executed side by side. It's a process, so that would have never happened. And then Jesus says, "Oh, who's ever without guilt cast the first stone," and the old people drop their rocks right away. They do. The younger ones kind of stood there for a second, and then they eventually dropped. They're like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, that story would have never happened. Never. Because
Well,
where's the guy?
I
It
think
just
that
didn't
you
work
know.
like that.
Well, here's the thing: before any god per se,
Hmm.
there was, like you said, the pagan gods, because there
Hmm.
was a
Hmm.
god for this and there was a god for that, and it
Yeah.
was the
Yep.
first time that there was one being
A
to,
coverall.
yeah, basically, you know what I'm saying? And
Not really.
you, as far as a coverall, or it is the first time that there is one being um to give credit to for all of those things, and not all of those things that have gods. But there are still obviously religions now,
Hmm.
and people of traditions and cultures that pray to the rain gods and the sun gods and stuff. And I think that as long as people aren't creating hate, that
Hmm.
they should be able to believe what they want to believe. I find this fascinating, um, between, talking about this, because I do, believe, like I said. And so you were saying, now, what is it that you believe in Jesus, or about Jesus, as far as, do you believe that he was resurrected? Do you believe that?
I believe everybody was resurrected. Now it's funny because, um, yeah, now I believe everybody gets. Yeah, as soon as you pass away, your spirit leaves your body. I mean, and it goes back up to the heavens. And but the story about his crucifixion is in the four gospels, and they all tell it a little differently. But in particular, this story where they come to the tomb, there's four horribly different accounts there. One, they had to wait till the Sabbath is over, so it's dark time, and it wasn't 3 days. He dies at 3 o'clock on a Friday, and they're there at sunrise on Sunday. That's what, a day and a half. So right there's your 3 days in the tomb story. It's
Mhm.
right there in front of you. You know what I mean?
Right.
But there's different accounts. So one time, Mary Magdalene, the women are going there as sun comes up, and here's another thing: they had to they couldn't just like put him in the tomb and call it a day because they had to, for this religion, to have Jesus rise from the dead. Somehow we got to find out that he's not in the tomb, right? Because
Right.
normally
Right. Right.
what they would do is seal up the tomb, and because it's going to stink, and then once it's all, the body's all dried out, they take the bones because they believe that there's 206 bones, and they want every one of them, and they want them for their resurrection someday. Because Ezekiel dry bones, that's about someday the bones are going to gather up together, and the bones are going to come together, and then the muscle and the tissue and everything, and then the skin and the hair, and then they're going to come back to life. Okay, so they always are very careful about keeping their bones, right? They don't get cremated and stuff like that. But so they put him in this tomb, and you're supposed to put him in there, seal it up, and a done deal. Well, in order for this story to have a resurrection, we have to somehow peek in there and see if he's gone, right? So they had to come up with a reason.
Well, I
why.
thought that in certainly in one case that the stone was moved when somebody went to
Right.
go by there, right? I
Right.
definitely
There's,
remember something to that effect.
There's different accounts. So one, the women come by themselves, and they see that the stone is rolled away or something like that, and they run and they get Peter and John and the gang, and then they come back, and then they see what's going on. They see his clothes there and stuff, and then in another account, there's the guys are there, and somehow in fact, the women on the way there are wondering, how are we going to get this stone rolled away? It's so heavy. And so when they get there, it's already rolled away. But then another time the guys come and they roll away. Anyway, the point is they had to have a reason for this story. Like, why are the women going there? Because you're supposed to be, done. Well, in order to show people that they rose, they had to come up with a story. So the story goes is that the women were going back Sunday morning. Okay, now wrap your mind around this, especially if you know anything about Judaism. So Friday, they take him down from the cross. He dies at 3:00. Joseph, a rich man, says, "Hey, he can use my tomb," and Barnabas or whoever the other guy was, I can't think of his name right now, but they take 100 pounds or 50 pounds of spices, okay? Because, and this kind of don't make sense either, because spices were used to mask the smell of death, right? And so what the Jewish people would do is when the person passes away, they kind of have him hang out a little bit. They put a bunch of spices around him so he doesn't smell. They have a funeral, and then they bury him, right? Well,
right.
In this case, it wasn't like that. They asked Pontius Pilate for the body. He says, sure, why not? Which would never happen. Okay, part of the punishment is not only do you die like that in front of everybody, and then you're thrown into a pile. You know what I mean? So they would have never agreed to that. But just say he did. All right, so they take these 100 or 50 pounds of spice or whatever, and they go and they put them in the tomb with the spices, which they wrapped them up in a sheet with all those spices, okay? I don't know why, so he smells good in there, because it's not going to be a funeral, but they did. They anointed him, they said. They put him in the tomb, they seal it up, right? Done deal. Well, when the women come, they're bringing more spices. Now, you know how ridiculous this is? They went Sunday morning to anoint his body with some oil and spices. Number one, he already got anointed with the spices on Friday, right? He's been in the tomb 2 more days, or day and a half, 2 more days now. Why in blazes would you go and roll that way and put more spices on them, right? It just makes no sense. But they had to, I forgot what they call it, where they have to come up a reason. It's like they do it in movies and stuff. Like, oh, we have to have a reason why she's driving the car. Anyway,
the catalyst. The catalyst.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, perfect. And so why are they? And I'm telling you what, you might know this, but in the Jewish religion, only a man will anoint a man's body, and never a woman. And only a woman is going to anoint a woman's body. Okay, so there's no way that these women are going to come and unwrap them. For one, like, why are we trying to? You know what it's like? It's like having a funeral on Friday, and then you go back and dig the guy up and put some cologne on him. You know what I mean? It just makes no sense. Okay,
Right.
makes no sense. While they're going back with more spices, like what? And you're women, you can't touch a man's dead, but it just anyway, none of it makes sense if you know, and you have to know about the Jewish law, and you have to know about the procedures and stuff like that for this to start saying red flags line. You know what I mean? So that's why I studied all that, and but yeah. So and then in another gospel, they go there and the angel's sitting on top of the thing, and in another gospel they say the Roman guards were paid off, or so. It just the stories are so different, and really none of them really make sense if you think about it. So
Well,
yeah.
So you were pretty disappointed, I guess.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yep. And yeah. So but being fascinated, studying it for all day, every day for years, finding out when it unravels and stuff, and things just start, and then Paul comes along and changes everything Jesus ever said, and it just, anyway, it unravels. And once I realized that this is not like God didn't take up his finger and write all this stuff in stone like the Ten Commandments, this is man-made. And then actually
believe, let me interrupt, do you believe in the 10 Commandments and that God did that?
Yeah. All right, so what 10 Commandments? Because there's 3 different 10 Commandments in there, and so if you go to Exodus is when Exodus is when, I think it's Exodus 20 is where you find one set of the 10 Commandments. So Moses goes up to the mountain,
right,
and he goes up there to get the 10 Commandments, and God writes the 10 Commandments with his finger on 2 stone tablets, right? And he's up there so long. He's up there like 40 days, and the crowd, his followers down below, got worried and thought maybe he died or something happened to him. So they thought, let's go to this other god. So they start melting their jewelry down and making a golden calf, right? Because they kind of gave up on that God and Moses. So anyway, so they're making their own golden calf, and Moses finally comes down, and he sees they're having a big party, and they're which is Baal. The calf is Baal, or whatever god they were worshiping, one of the ancient gods, that came before this Yahweh did. And as a matter of fact, in the Old Testament, you'll see the names change. It's Abba, it's Yahweh, it's God, it's anyway, they got multiple names because they're kind of combining different gods and they're kind of meshing them. But nonetheless, Moses comes down from the mountain. He sees what's going on. He gets mad and he throws the tablets and breaks them. Right. And so he ended up having to do the 10 Commandments over himself. Right. And I can tell you, I know I have the 10 Commandments memorized, and it's so funny to me because Christians will just throw a big old fit if somebody, if when they're taking 10 Commandments down, there was a while where people were taking them off public property and they were, anyway, Christians got all upset when the 10 Commandments were being destroyed and stuff. And most Christians can't even name the 10 Commandments.
I agree. I
know them. I know them by heart, but most people don't.
Would you? Would you recite them, please? I don't know them by heart.
Sure. So there's 10 of them. The first 4 are the relationship with you and God. And I might get the numbers mixed up, but one is don't worship any other God except for me. One is don't you worship my name in vain. Let's see. I know the 4th one is the Sabbath. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you work, 1 day you rest. And then, what was it? Fourth. Anyways, the first four, let's think about that. The first four with your relationship, you and God. Number 5 is, that's the easy one. That's you and your parents. Honor your parents.
Right.
It says, honor your mother and father, so the days of your life in the land I give you will be long. It's just so you have a long life. And that kind of goes back to, because back then, if you didn't honor your parents and you're unruly and stuff, the parents brought you.
They brought you into the world, Kathy. They'll take you.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They will take you out because that's what the Bible said. That's what they were taught. If your son is unruly, take him out. In fact, so many parents were doing that they had to make the rule that, okay, before you take out your kid, bring them to the priest to make sure that, maybe they could be fixed or something. So people were all too happy.
I have the 10 Commandments.
Yep. The 5. Yep. So
it
the
says,
third.
You want me? I
ahead.
am the Lord. Thou shalt not
have no gods before me.
Right before me. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain, which you said. Remember to keep the Lord's day, which was the Sabbath. Honor thy father and mother. That's the first one. Thou shalt not kill.
All right, stop.
Okay.
You're missing one.
Well, there's 10 bullet points here.
The 5th is on your mother and father.
Wait. Okay, I'm in the wrong one. I don't want that.
You are. Okay, because that's what I was going to say too. There's 3 different versions of the 10 Commandments. The one with Moses is in Exodus chapter 20, verse 2 through, I don't know if it's 18 or something like that. So we want Exodus chapter 20.
Okay, hang on.
All right.
Let me look that up.
Yep. And so one is going to be, the 5 is going to be, you're missing one about the God, something about you and God. Anyway, I can't think right now, but number 5 is on your mother and your father.
Okay, here it is. Hang on.
1 is thou shalt not kill. 1 is
you shall not have gods before me. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery.
Yep.
And
no other gods.
Of these words. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above.
Yep. Okay, so that's graven images. That's the one I couldn't think of. Yeah, the graven images. So those first 4 ones are for you and God. Yep. And then the 5th is on your father and mother. Then we got the thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery.
You shall not misuse the name of the Lord.
Yep.
Remember the Sabbath day.
Yeah, that's 4. That's name in vain.
Murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet, and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear.
They did.
Stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die."
Yeah, because when God spoke, everybody's so scared. Even the animals were giving birth; they were so scared. But and Moses came down; his face was pitch white, and they were kind of scared the crap out of everybody. But yeah, so an interesting thing enough, if you're Catholic, guess what, Catholics? You look at your 10 Commandments because they took one out. Oh yeah, they took one out.
Actually, that's the one that I said that I was reading from that said I don't want to be in that one. And I don't mean disrespect to the Catholics because I know that there's Catholic. I just think that there are so many old traditions that are not taken into consideration for modern day circumstances. And once upon a time ago, the Bible was actually written in modern day circumstances. So I mean, there has to be more gray, and there's no gray, in my opinion.
All right.
Interpretation. I'm sorry.
Okay, so that one is the 10 Commandments.
Right.
Okay, the Roman Catholics took out number 3, I think it is, the one where you're not supposed to have graven image statues and stuff like that. for obvious reasons, because they're
Yeah, that's the
church.
one that I read. Yes.
Yes,
That
yeah.
was
So
the Catholic
yep.
10 Commandments that I
Now,
originally read and said that's not
exactly.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think it's number 3. You should not have any graven images, which means
It is. Yep.
statues.
It is.
Okay,
Yep.
but now they didn't want that. They like their statues. You go into a Catholic church and you'll see. I went to a Catholic funeral. There was every size Jesus from
Yes, they're
tiny.
very grandiose, and you're
Oh
right.
yeah. hmm
Absolutely, I
Okay,
agree.
so they did not want that statue one in there. So they took that. I think it's number 3. They took that one out, and they went down to number 10. Number 10 was thou shalt not covet the neighbor's wife, his house, his mules, and all that other stuff. Okay, so don't covet your neighbor's this stuff. Well, what the Catholics is, they took out number 3 about the statues, but they thought, wait, we still have to have it be 10. So they went down to number 10, and they split that one in 2. So now you'll have number 9 is thou shalt not covet the neighbor's wife, and then 10 is thou shalt not cover the neighbor's house, donkey, and all this other stuff he owns.
Right,
Harley
okay.
Davidson.
See, and there we go. There we
Mhm.
go. A perfect
Yeah.
example for something. And the 10 Commandments
Mhm.
are pretty damn important, in my opinion.
Right. So yeah, look
Because
at you.
those,
Yeah.
that's the one thing. Am I correct in saying when it comes to the Bible,
Mhm.
that is the one thing where God actually speaks to somebody, and
Mhm. Mhm.
that's the only time, right, when Abraham says that this is the word of the Lord, right?
Well, Abraham brought his son up on the Temple Mount there area to sacrifice his son Isaac, and so when he goes to draw the knife back, God says, "Up, stop!"
Right. But who
Just
reads
kidding.
the 10 Commandments? Moses. I'm sorry, Moses.
Moses did, yeah.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. I meant Moses. I didn't mean Abraham. I meant Moses. So
Yeah.
but what I'm saying is the 10 Commandments is so important because that is
Right.
the only time in the Bible that he speaks to somebody with the direct word as opposed to the interpretation of it. And that's why that is something, in my opinion, that should have stayed the same. So if something like the 10 Commandments looks
Yeah.
different in other
Yep.
people's beliefs, there has to be some leeway into the fact that nobody is 1000%. Nobody was there. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
and
And the funny thing is, I'm sorry. Funny thing is, then Moses had to carve out the second set, right?
right.
And so then they put it in the Ark of the Covenant, right? And nobody can touch the Ark of the Covenant. In fact, one time, Aaron's sons, the high priest's sons, they were moving it. That's why they always had to have poles, right? They had to stick the poles through it because nobody could actually touch their hands on the Ark of the Covenant, right? Or they'll die. So that's why they carried it with 2 poles, right? One in the front, one in the back. They carried it with poles. Well, one time, Aaron's sons were moving the Ark of the Covenant, and it started to tip over, and the son went to grab it so it wouldn't tip, and God smote him dead. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Whoever, I can't remember if it was Aaron's son, but whoever tried to stop it from tipping over, bam, dead. Okay, so nobody can touch it because inside the Ark of the Covenant was supposed to be those 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets, right? And then some, but that's different. Sometimes they'll say Aaron's staff that budded. Aaron threw the staff down and buds grew off of it. He threw his cane down, his wooden cane, and buds grew out of it. That's supposed to be in there. And so there's different accounts of what's supposed to be in there. But them 10 Commandments are always supposed to be in there. And sometimes they said a bowl of manna and whatever. So different people change it, but nonetheless, it was supposed to be the 10 Commandments in the Ark of the Covenant. But somehow the Philistines can come and take it and do whatever they want and touch it all they want. You know what I mean? And so somehow the Ark of the Covenant disappeared with those 10 Commandments. So I guess we'll never know what was on it. But I'm going to tell you what, 2 other times they'll tell you, you can look this up. You can Google it. Look up three versions of the 10 Commandments. Because after that, there's 2 more versions. One is kind of the same down the road. And then they have another one that's just out in left field, like thou shalt not boil the kid in the mother's milk, which means you can't cook the goat in its mother's own milk. You know what I mean? But they just got something. It gets weirder as it, But there's 2 other versions down the road. You know what I mean? Which Anyway, so there's three different versions in the Old Testament of what they say, but most people know the Ten Commandments by Moses Mount Sinai story.
Right. That's what I would say is the most
Mm-hmm.
popular and the most,
Yeah.
but not if you're Catholic, apparently, right?
Right. So
Which
yeah,
is
mm-hmm.
so that's a big deal because now let me ask you this because I'm ignorant. Is Catholic the same as Roman Catholic or no?
Yeah, that's where it came from, Rome. Remember
Yeah, but I
Rome?
mean, I'm saying is the Roman Catholic Church the same thing as a Catholic Church? Is it the one and the same? Okay.
Yeah, because remember the Pope lives in Rome,
Right. I've
and
been there. I've actually been to the
Oh,
Vatican.
really?
Yeah, I've been to the Vatican. My
That's
dad
cool.
was very generous with his time and money, and he made sure that we saw the world. I've been to a lot of cool places, but I've been to the Vatican, yes.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you can imagine the statues there, but yeah, so in the Vatican, they're the ones that are going to have the different Ten Commandments. They're going to take out that one about the statues every time.
Yeah, they're very good because there are, and I have to say that the church that I attend, which is the Presbyterian branch church, it does not have statues. They have the cross, the simple cross. I don't think that there's any statue of Jesus in there.
Yeah, that's kind of a Catholic thing. A lot of churches won't because, well, you know why? Because you're Presbyterian and the Lutherans and whatever, they're still going by the one that's got the statue laws in there, right? So your Presbyterian probably has the original Ten Commandments that says don't have graven images. That's why they're not going to drag the statues in there.
Right. Well, see, I don't think. I mean, like, I don't think that God is a vain God. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there was also, wasn't it? I think it was Buddha that didn't want any statues of him either. And I'm not comparing God to Buddha, but I'm comparing the image bit. You know that it was.
Well, God in the Old Testament, God comes straight out. He says, "I'm a very jealous God. You better not have any other God." He says, "I'm jealous."
I know that. I know that he's a very jealous God because one of the Ten Commandments says, "Thou shalt not." I mean that's
right,
there, right? So,
right.
But
and by the way, that admission right there, that's an admission that there's other gods, isn't it? If God himself are saying, hey, don't think of these other gods, well, you know what I mean? Didn't he just admit there's other gods?
Well, I think when he says, because the word is before me, right? Isn't that what it says is before me?
Right, but nonetheless.
But if you take it literally, then before him, before God, there was the several other gods that had to do with the earth, the sun, the wind, all the pagan gods in which you spoke about. So if you take it literally, what God is saying is, you forget about all the ones before me. I don't know if God's saying, you know what, wherever you want to go, just find goodness. I don't know, because he's definitely not saying.
Well, yeah, but the problem is
about
that
interpretation, isn't it? Though, seriously.
Well, the problem is the Israelites were actually worshiping Canaanite gods and Mesopotamia, and that came long before the Israelites, long before the Hebrews, the Jewish people. So there was, as a matter of fact, at the beginning, I think it was. And here at the beginning, you said that you don't believe that people live all this long time, and I was going to tell you why they have to say that. They have to say Adam and Eve lived 900 years because their story isn't making sense. There was other gods. They were worshiping Canaanite gods. They were from Mesopotamia. So there's stories like say for instance Moses. Now, I'm sorry, Noah. When Noah built the ark, so supposedly there was a worldwide flood, which never happened. It was a flood in that area around, the Mediterranean or whatever. There was a flood, but but so in order to not try to copy the other stories, they had to say that Noah was 500 when he started building the ark, and he was almost 600 when the flood came. And there's different. Okay, it flooded 40 days and 40 nights. Another one said it was 6 months. And so the stories all kind of not really consistent about the flood. But if you study ancient history of religions and stuff, you'll figure out that in Mesopotamia, which is where was before them. As a matter of fact, just think about this. There's so many red flags. So the flood story actually came long before they tried to claim it. It was long before Noah. Okay, the flood story, and that's why they said he was 500 years old. You know why? Because if he was normal, 50 or 60 years old, that you could say, hey, wait a minute. This is the story of Gilgamesh. Have you ever heard the story of Gilgamesh?
Yes, I have.
Okay, well, that's the original flood story. Okay.
Okay.
Same thing, same. I mean, do side by side comparison. That story came first. They copied that story, but they had to. So in order for say, well, no, they have to stretch, Noah out to be 500 years old, so it don't look like, like they took their story. So
I
anyway,
want you to, if you could, because I can't recite the story of Gilgamesh. I did study world religion in college. That's why I'm familiar with it. Can you just remind me? Because if I can't remember it, I know there's people that have never heard of Gilgamesh. Please.
Right, it's the same story. It's a flood story, and it's
But who
it just
was Gilgamesh? Because Gilgamesh was somebody.
yeah, I think it was from Mesopotamia, or whatever. It's I'd have to refresh my memory, but I did a side by side comparison with Gilgamesh story and the Noah's Ark story, and it's almost to the T. You could pull it up on Google and just put Gilgamesh versus Noah's flood. Gilgamesh flood versus Noah. You'll see it'll just go line for line for line, every fact for fact for fact. They completely
Okay, Gilgamesh versus
this.
Noah's Ark. The story of Gilgamesh's flood. I can't pronounce this. Utopianism. I don't know. And Noah's Ark share core themes of a divine flood saving a chosen family, but differ significantly in detail, scale, purpose, and design. Gilgamesh's cube-like ark was built in days for chaotic gods, while Noah's rectangular ark took decades to build for a single righteous God, reflecting different cultural understandings of divinity and cosmic justice, though both tales likely stem from ancient Near Eastern flood memories. Key similarities: divine warning, large vessels, animals saved, birds released, mountain landing, sacrifice, blessing, reward. Key differences: ark design, construction time, flood duration, reason for flood, divine nature, stuff that, absolutely.
I mean, it's the same. It's just
memory, literary influence, theological contrast. So,
because in Noah's story, God was just sick of people. He was just sick of them. He was sorry.
Right.
He made
it's time
people.
To start again. It's time to start again.
He's sorry. He even made people. And then Gilgamesh had a different reason. And the boats were shaped different, but it's the same story. You know what I mean? It's the same story. And that's not the only story. There's other duplicates in there too. And that's, I think, why they stretched everybody's ages out. Like Adam. Oh, and here's another one, Adam and Eve. Okay.
Okay, but hang on one second. I just want to tell people who Gilgamesh was.
Sure, go ahead.
Was a legendary semi-divine king of ancient Uruk, famous as the hero of the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the world's oldest stories, known for his incredible strength, friendship with Enkidu. Did I pronounce that right?
What did you say? Friendship
with Enkidu, slaying monsters like I can't pronounce some of this stuff, and the bull heaven. So he was a king. and his legacy was the builder of Uruk's walls, apparently. So, but I remember reading about him. Absolutely. So, yeah, you said Adam and Eve. So enlighten me about Adam and Eve, please.
Okay. Before we move on, Adam and Eve, I just want to ask people common sense. If you are in Mesopotamia or you're in the Middle East, how do you know I got flooded over here?
Yeah, I would have to say, especially back then.
Right. There's no internet. There's no, not even Pony Express. There ain't nothing. How would they know the whole world got flooded? And how did the penguins get there? And how did the penguins get back? And how did the giraffes get off the boat there in Turkey? Supposedly the ark landed in Turkey. And so how'd the elephants and the giraffes go from Turkey over down to Africa? You know what I mean? None of it makes sense. Anyway, yeah. But and so okay, Adam and Eve, that's another big problem. So Adam and Eve were supposed to be the first man and woman. Although later other stories, I should say, Adam had a first wife, and her name was Lilith, and Eve was supposed to be the second wife. But nonetheless, okay, so just say Adam and Eve were the first humans.
Where did you get that? Where did you get that Adam had a first wife named Lilith, you said?
Yeah, Lilith. You can check into that. That's just from different texts, you know what I mean? And so supposedly, and that's another thing. So Genesis, okay, chapter 1 and chapter 2. You don't even get into the first chapter, 2 chapters, and there's already a huge problem. Huge problem. God created in one of them, the first story. Well, there's 2 stories. I get with chapter 1 or chapter 2, but one of them, one chapter will tell you that Adam and Eve were created. He spoke everything into existence. Now, these are 2 different gods you're talking about. If you get real, so one version of creation story is that God spoke everything into existence, and that's how things. Some gods spoke things into existence sometimes, and other gods did other ways. But in one story of the creation, God speaks it. He speaks this. He speaks the earth into existence. He speaks man and woman, and he saw that they were good, and he told them to go forth and multiply. And then he made.
1 second. So can I brought up Lilith. Okay. So in Jewish folklore, Lilith is traditionally described as Adam's first wife, created from the earth like him, asserting her equality and leaving the Garden of Eden when he demanded subservience. She is not in the Bible, but features in texts like the alphabet of Ben Sira, and where she becomes a demonic figure. Though later feminist interpretations have reclaimed her as a symbol of female autonomy. So that is excellent.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I said. It's from a different Jewish text, but anyway, but yeah. So, and if you noticed that what you just read there, they were made formed out of the ground. Now, in one creation story, God speaks everything. The clouds and the whatever, the sky and the
breath. In the breath, that's right.
Breath. He speaks it, and bam, it's done. And then I do this, and then we want the animals and go forth and multiply. Adam and Eve. He didn't say Adam and Eve, but then the people. He spoke humans, Adam and Eve, into existence. And then he told them to go forth and multiply. Okay, that was the first commandment. The first thing God ever commanded a human is to go forth and multiply. Right. Well, now you get to another chapter, and they say it all over again. It's a different creation story. Now this God, which I believe there's 2 different gods, they tried to mesh. They didn't want to throw one story out or the other, so they tried to mesh it. So the next chapter, you have a whole different creation story. Now this time, God's making everything with his hands. Now, he made the earth with his hands. He did the animals with his hands. And he did this, and then when he's ready to 6, 6 is the number of man, because on the 6th day, he formed Adam out of clay. So he makes And there was a god, there was ancient gods who created things out of mud, out of clay, and they came to life. Okay, so I believe
Right.
that they're drawing this from a previous story. But so there's a second version. So this is chapter 1, chapter 2. There's two different stories. So the second creation story is, God's making everything with his hands, and then he makes Adam with his clay, and he blows the breath of life into his nostrils, and Adam comes to life. Okay? Then Adam's like walking around and stuff, and he's getting bored, and then God's like an afterthought, says, you know what? I should get you a helpmate. So then he puts Adam under to sleep, and he pulls out Adam's rib, and he makes the woman out of Adam's rib, and then she comes to life, and she's there to help him, because the Bible was every word of it was written by a man, and so the man, it's always going to be the man that's in charge. Okay.
Right.
And so in this story, see, the first story, when they breathe them both in the same time, they don't really go with that story, because that makes them equal, right?
Right.
So when you talk to anybody in church, they'll say, "Oh yeah, Adam was born first, and then so that makes woman secondary. It makes her subservient to him. It makes her less.
I agree.
You understand?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so she's just there to help you, the man. Right. And so, but the problem with that story is, wait a minute. So you put Adam on there. What was he just going to live there forever by himself? And so the woman was like an afterthought. Like, hey, wait a minute. You look kind of bored. Let's get you, a woman or whatever. And you know what I mean? So two completely different stories. And that's within 2 chapters, the first 2 chapters of the book,
And men and women have the same number of ribs.
Actually, the strange thing is, I think I was an X-ray technician. I could have swore.
No, I think that hang on.
Why don't you Google that? Because I thought a man had.
Contrary to a widely held misconception, males and women, male and females, have the same number of ribs. However, some people are born with more or less than the typical 24 ribs. Most of the time, having an unusual number of ribs does not cause any health concerns.
Yeah, there's like a little half rib sometimes, like
Men and women have 12 pairs of ribs. A few individuals have 13 or 11 pairs.
Yeah,
the idea that men have fewer ribs, it's a biblical thing. Right. It's not. It's not.
So right there would discredit the surgery in the rib story. You know what I mean? And that one was just to, concrete the fact that men rule the world and women are just there to help. You know what I mean?
So do you believe that there was a first wife?
No.
Do you? Well, then why take it out?
Why did they take it out?
Yeah, like why did they take out the belief? Okay.
Well, it complicates things, and you can't.
I understand. So they made it dirty, more or less, or
yeah. Well, it just like
any of the story. They just turned it all into a falsehood. The whole bit. He never had a first wife.
I mean, he might have, but I don't believe there was 2 first human beings. I don't know. I mean, that's hard to say when this all started with humans. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't believe there was and here's another thing. Here I'm going to tell you what disproves it, because it just falls apart the more you learn. So so Adam and Eve. So whether they're together or made separate doesn't matter. But Adam and Eve had their first son, which was Abel, right? Or they had Cain and they had Abel. I can't remember, but they had Cain and Abel. Okay.
Right.
Now, at some point, Cain slew Abel. He killed his brother, and then they had a replacement son called Seth, and Seth really means replacement. So they replaced Abel, who died, with Seth, and when Cain killed his brother Abel, God wasn't happy with that, and he said, "You know what? You need to get out of here. We're gonna exile you. I'm gonna put you down in the land of I think it was, I can't remember where he got exiled to, but he said, you're going to go live in that city over there. No, wait a minute, what city? What do you mean go to a city? Yeah, he sent them off to some city, far off city. And he put a mark of Cain. He put the mark on Cain so nobody will kill him. Okay, he says, I don't really want you, nobody do nothing to you. So he put a mark on Cain so nobody will ever hurt him or kill him for what he did or whatever. But he got exiled to another city. Well, wait a minute.
No, wait a minute. Where he built a city. Hang on, Nod.
I thought Nod. Yes, yeah. Well, Nod. Yeah, but he was sent off to the land of Nod. I think I thought it was but maybe it was Nod. That's all Mesopotamia over there. It used to be anyway. Mm-hmm. And that's where the Canaanites came out of.
In the land of Nod, yeah, where he built a city and had a son named Enoch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where Enoch came in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have the books of Enoch. Have
you
read through the books of Enoch?
Oh yeah.
I haven't read through them, but I have them.
Enoch is interesting, and he is throughout the you'll hear about him in the Old Testament, but yeah, there's a lot more to Enoch than it's in the Bible. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a whole books on him. There's a lot of books on him. Yeah,
and according to the Old Testament, Enoch never died. He never saw death. He just was taken up. I think it was a whirlwind or something, like a little tornado took him up to heaven. So he never faced death. It was two of them. I think it was him and who was the other one? Isaiah? Not Isaiah. I can't remember. But there's two people who never tasted death, and he's supposed to be one of them. But, yeah. Wow. Yep. He was too good to die. Let's put it that way.
I think that it's fascinating, and as you peel it apart, now, do you have faith? Are you somebody that has faith?
100%. I've come full circle to the faith that I was born with, and that's the faith that there's a God. I've always known from as young as I can remember that there's a God, because I did go to church, but I always knew that there was a God. God was always watching, and when I do good, I get rewarded. I do bad, I get punished. I just felt like that, and so now in the last several years, I've more studied into spirituality. That there's a God. There definitely is a God. In fact, God has helped me out so much in my whole life. But there's not just God in heaven. There's all kinds of things that I don't think the churches want people to know about. And one of those things is like that we have helpers, okay? Because the church, I believe churches are a business for the most part. And I think what churches are good for, I think, is fellowship. I think it's good for people to get together.
A sense of community. Yep.
Yeah, community, fellowship, companionship, just humans getting together with other humans. I mean, I think it's good for, I think it's good for have that community and that fellowship. But I believe that there is a huge, there's a God source, there's a God. And then we have angels, guardian angels that guard and protect us. We have spirit guides that guide us. And we have our loved ones who cross over back over to the other side, and they're there to help us too. And they can help us much more from the other side than they ever could when they were here. So we got like an army of people, that we have for resources that want us to they want to help us. But most churches and most people are taught, it's just God or Jesus and nothing else. And but there is, and once I've learned about that, it's amazing what you can do with help. You know what I mean? I have spirit guides that guide me now, and I have, and listen, these are concepts that are in most religions, not so much westernized religion, but all the religions around the world. Yeah, there's look at the natives. Yeah, they have spirit guides. They have, you know, ancient religions, all the other religions. They always knew somebody was there to guide them. They knew somebody was there to protect them. But yeah, and you have to ask, you know what I mean? So once you learn about that, it opens up a whole new world, you know what I mean? And
Right.
yeah, and there's ways to communicate with them. They communicate all kinds of ways. They even the numbers on your clock 444 555. There's you know they um, there's just so many ways that they can communicate with us. And once you learn that, and I've been learning how to tune in, um, like if I can't find something, I lost something or whatever, I will sit here and ask my spirit guides to guide me to that, and I will just stand up and walk right to the thing. You know what I mean? And so, like, you got to learn about it, and then you got to learn how to use it. And we got a lot of resources. And the way I somebody explained it a long time ago to me, like it's almost like you remember those like in Spencer Gifts or whatever, those places that sold cool stuff. They used to have those
Yes.
fiber optic things that was
Yep.
like it was like a light, like a flashlight, but
Yep.
then it had these things coming out of it, and then and at the end of each one it was like lit up. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You know, fiber.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about. Uh-huh.
Okay. So figure that is the source of the light is God, and then each one of those lights come out of there is all our helpers and spirits and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like
That,
that. Like,
that's a really good way
yeah,
of that's a really good way of saying it, I think. So, you
yeah.
know.
So the source is God, and then you have all these shoots off of God that are spirits there to help us, and so yeah, I've learned how to communicate with my loved ones who have passed away. You know, and I know people that churches will say, "Oh, that's the devil." Well, that's funny. Why would the devil take time out of his day, his busy day, to come help me feel better? You know what I mean? That makes
Right,
no
right,
sense. You know what I mean?
right,
None of
right.
that makes sense. So anyway, I think the church wants, you know, the churches. A lot of churches are a business, and they are, you know, and it's bad for business if you don't need them. You know what I mean? If you don't think like, oh, you're gonna burn in hell and all this stuff, then they're going to go out of business. You know what I mean? Which actually the churches are kind of dwindling. You know what I mean? Over the last century.
Yeah, I would
Um,
say that I unfortunately agree with that because again,
mhm,
I think that there's a lot of churches, unfortunately, that discriminate in what God's
mhm,
love is, and that's
mhm,
not to be discriminated. And that's never been my God. You know, my God
mhm.
is inclusive and loving, and that's my God. And
Well,
what do you think about heaven?
oh yeah, that's awesome. Heaven is actually where we come from, right? We're spirits. We're a soul. We are spirit, and and so we are in heaven when before we come here. Earth is kind of like a school. It's a very hard school, and I believe in reincarnation, which makes a lot more sense. And the Jewish people do too. They were in the closet for a long time. A lot of Jewish people are coming out of the closet and say, "Yeah, well, you know, yeah, we believe in," because I've heard it right out of the rabbi's mouth. That, yeah, we're kind of coming out of closets. A lot of us believe in reincarnation because it makes more sense that your spirit, your soul comes to earth, and this is a very difficult level here to be down on earth. It's a very low vibration, a low energy, and it's very difficult. And so when your soul comes to earth, it's very dense and hard compared to heaven, and and I believe that's why babies will sleep almost every day for the first several months. It's so heavy down here.
What will sleep? Babies? Is that what you
Babies,
said? Okay,
yeah.
babies.
So when you're born, the babies are like,
Right.
well, this
Always
is such a
sleeping, right.
always sleeping because it's hard to adjust from being a spirit down to here, and but yeah, I believe that heaven is where we all are, where we come from. We come down here, and this is to learn lessons, to enrich our soul, to grow our soul, right? And so you know, the people I've studied and stuff, different people I've you know, take from a little bit from each one, but they're all kind of on the same page. Is that, yeah, we come to Earth here to for specific lessons, and so the first few rounds to Earth, you are a young soul, right? Then more times you cycle back to Earth, you learn more lessons and more lessons and enrich your soul and grow and learn. And so if you've been here 50 times, you know, your older soul. If you've been here, could be here 100 times, you know, and you're really old soul. They actually have different levels of like a baby soul, a young soul, a middle, you know. So the more you come and cycle to Earth, it's kind of complicated to just say, you know, kind of sum it up. But it is a place to learn, and I believe that the animals are here to teach us things that the humans we can't learn from humans. Can't learn everything from each other. So the animals are here to teach us different lessons that we can't get anywhere else. Much different, but they are also souls that reincarnate.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So I'm going to end the recording here and say thank you.
And thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Not a thank you for being here.